Ladies and gentlemen, type in Joe Biden on the Google. CNN ex-George W. Bush officials launch new group supporting Joe Biden. There's already a group, as we all know, running absurd ads trying to disparage President Trump. Full of, I think it's like Bill Kristol, Max Boot. Not exactly sure who runs it, but these are all Bush-era Republicans that already had a group. There's yet another Bush-era Republican group. The Hill, alumni of George W. Bush administration, launched pro-Biden super PAC. This is exactly what I was talking about when I was on the left. Getting published in The Hill, The Huffington Post, Salon. Now I'm published in The Federalist, The Daily Caller, The Jerusalem Post. My value system remains the same in terms of foreign policy. This is why you get Bernie Sanders supporters who are voting for President Trump. Okay? CNN ex-George W. Bush officials launched new group supporting Joe Biden. The Hill, alumni of George W. Bush administration, launched pro-Biden super PAC. Forbes, former George W. Bush officials launch PAC supporting Joe Biden. Fox News, former George W. Bush officials form new group to back Biden. Let's just look at The Hill really quickly. Hundreds of former members of George W. Bush's administrations have formed a super PAC to support Vice President Joe Biden. Hundreds. Okay. I'm gonna have to tell you this, and this is gonna be important because when Madam Secretary becomes nominee, and she will become nominee, all this information will be very important. Ladies and gentlemen, in the pinned comment and description, you can go ahead and share the link, or just, tell your friends. The Huffington Post called me the biggest Bernie Sanders booster on the internet. The Washington Post called me the unofficial scribe of Sanders' most hardcore voters. Those links are below. Please share them everywhere. NPR quoted me alongside 538. I said Clinton would lose the election. They said Trump wouldn't be GOP nominee. That link, that NPR link, is below. Share that everywhere. Also, my Huffington Post article, Hillary Clinton 2020 is a reality. Get ready for 8 years of Trump. Please share that everywhere. That's written in 2017. And my Times of Israel article, Hillary Clinton, not Biden, will be nominee. These are all important. You have my writing in the Federalist below, the Huffington Post, Salon. So, if you're interested in who I am or what I'm about, go ahead and read those articles, and you'll get a clear picture of my value system, especially pertaining to foreign policy. I am against counterinsurgency conflicts, but here, hundreds of former members of George W. Bush's administration have formed a super PAC to support former Vice President Joe Biden, saying they are alarmed by President Trump's conduct in office. Oh, they're alarmed. Do you want to know what they're alarmed about? This is a BBC article that I'm always going to quote. Always. Afghan conflict. Okay. U.S. and organization that I can't say on YouTube signed deal to end 18-year war. And President Trump stated a quote this year. This was February 29, 2020, just when we still had record low unemployment. And it was still, the sky was falling for Democrats even then. But this is a quote that every person on the planet should listen to and should take seriously. It's time, after all these years, to bring our people back home. President Trump. This is exactly why I'm voting for President Trump. In fact, I have an article below, right below the Huffington Post and Washington Post articles talking about me. And right next to my Patreon, if you want to support my voice long term, your support is greatly appreciated. But it's why Bernie Sanders supporters should vote for Trump, President Trump, in 2020. I explain why former Bernie Sanders supporters should vote for President Trump in 2020. I explain exactly why. And one of the biggest reason for me is foreign policy. I want Americans home. The United States can't be either the world's police, or we can't try to impose our foreign policy objectives. Well, we can't be everywhere forever. This is not feasible, and the men and women of the United States military and their families have sacrificed for too long, and in many cases have suffered for too long, because hundreds of Bush administration officials, former Bush administration officials, are now launching a super PAC to support Joe Biden. Do you think they're two sides of the same coin? When I said there was no difference, or very little difference, I meant there's no major difference between establishment Republicans and establishment Democrats. They're former Bush-era neoconservatives and essentially the foreign policy wing of the Bush paradigm, the Bush doctrine. But it's not a doctrine. It's just listen to failed, faulty, inaccurate intelligence reports that are just propaganda, which you hear now, and then base your foreign policy on intelligence reports, and then say, gosh, we tried. Oopsie, I guess we have to stay there forever. This is a much bigger issue than climate change. Much bigger. You can make the absurd claim, well, the climate change affects the whole planet, and we only affect the lives of certain countries. Well, no, our foreign policy affects the lives of millions upon millions in other countries and millions upon millions within this country immediately. Okay, there's a reason that President Obama stated, hey, we're oil independent, we're energy independent, and we're the largest producer of oil and natural gas in the world, or one of the largest. That's because of me, folks. That's what he said. He didn't worry about the world ending because of climate. It's still an issue. It's a big, important. Climate change is one of the most important issues we face. But even Noam Chomsky on the far left stated that a potential nuclear catastrophe is number one. Even Stephen Hawking they both stated the first issue we face is potential nuclear annihilation, then climate change. But what's his name? Whatever. Chomsky's actually he voted for, I think, Clinton, which is hilarious. But President Trump is more along the lines of his foreign policy, which is hilarious. Getting Americans out of never-ending counterinsurgency conflicts. We are in other countries, and we're sending our soldiers to patrol streets. We've sent our soldiers to patrol streets, and they say, well, we have to stay in Afghanistan and Iraq forever because, we were in Japan and Germany forever. There are a million different reasons. The million differences. The biggest difference is that Germany and Japan were never counterinsurgency conflicts after those wars ended. So and both regions of the world where we're still at are counterinsurgency conflicts, where you have to get to the hearts and minds of people there who have to always live with America's adversaries. So who do you think they're going to side with? Then you have the potential, when I mentioned nuclear confrontation, you have the potential for Russia and the United States to always be in close proximity with one another. Okay? Especially in places like Syria, where the genius Madam Secretary wanted a no-fly zone. Well, what do you think happens when you have MiGs flying over the no-fly zone? Do you enforce it? Ah, danger zone. So they want Top Gun 3, or they want this renewed Cold War, just because of Facebook ads, and just because they actually presided over. Yes, President Obama's administration presided over the sale of 20% of U.S. uranium capacity. This is an absolute fact. At that point, and then it was lower than 20% of U.S. uranium capacity, and oh my God, they said, oh, it's lower, it's not 20%, it's more like 2%, it's like 1%. Who cares? They have to cover up the fact that President Obama did not veto the sale. Only President Obama could have stopped the sale. Why didn't he? If the tables were turned, Democrats would have said, Trump didn't veto the sale because Pompeo's foundation received millions upon millions from Uranium One. You can't do that with Democrats. You can't cancel any of their politicians for horrible things that they've said. You can't cancel any of their, celebrities or pundits, political pundits, for any blog posts or any horrible, racist or homophobic things that they've said in the past. You have to forgive them. The most duplicitous, disingenuous political paradigm where they judge and condemn. But my God, if you look at their past and say, hey, you wrote this, oh, please forgive me, and they get the forgiveness. When they demand empathy, they receive the empathy. When a conservative demands empathy or just to be left alone, it's, oh my God, you're irredeemable, you're horrible, and you should never have existed. So there you go. And also they... One reason they'll lose, and they will lose, November 3rd, President Trump's going to win, just to let you know, because you have Bush-era Republicans, hundreds of Bush-era Republicans. You have hundreds of Bush Republicans starting this new super PAC. You have an issue, ladies and gentlemen, where they've convinced themselves that Trump is on the ropes. The polls show that he's going to lose. You have Republicans who don't like him. He has a 90% approval rating in the Republican Party. A 90% approval rating. Okay? By one estimate, one insurance estimate, there's $1.4 billion in insurance claims throughout the country because of property damage, property loss. Okay. Then you have the pandemic. 5 states account for over 4 to 5 Democratic-run states. New York, New Jersey, Michigan, Illinois, and Pennsylvania account for well over half of all the cases and lives lost in the entire United States of America. Okay. They're blaming Trump for the pandemic. They're blaming his response to the protests. I don't know what that means, but George Floyd was murdered in Minneapolis, a blue state. A blue city in a blue state. Okay? So, when you have alumni of George W. Bush administration launch pro-Biden super PAC, you have to ask yourself, are these establishment Republicans, that's one reason they went along with the whole absurd Trump-Russia myth, and John Durham and William Barr are unraveling all of that. But establishment Republicans and establishment Democrats are the same people on foreign policy, the same people. We know this now because you have hundreds of former Bush officials launching a super PAC for Biden. They want to get their paradigm back. This is a big part of this is foreign policy. The biggest part of all of this is foreign policy, which is, interestingly enough, the only thing, or the biggest issue the Democrats don't care about. Therefore, their minds are Facebook ads. The biggest foreign policy objective is election interference. Everything comes back to them. Like they're the biggest narcissists on the planet. But you have failed foreign policy for 20 years that President Trump has stated, and I'll give you the quote again. This is in the BBC that he was quoted. He signed a deal to bring Americans home. It's time after all these years to bring our people back home. We need to bring home Americans from these never-ending counterinsurgency conflicts where we are either placing them as peacekeepers or in between two factions that want to go after one another, or as chess pieces to make sure that Russia doesn't do this or that another organization doesn't do that. We can't do this. And then you're talking about, well, the human cost and the human lives and the toll on families and loved ones. That's the main issue. But then there's the issue of you have Medicare for all, man, those people. Well, how do you think you're going to get the money? When people say, when Bernie says he wants to slash the Pentagon's budget, you know how you can do that? Bring home Americans. You notice how he never says that. Bernie Sanders can never say, because Bernie Sanders is a good human being, but in many ways he's a fraud. And I hate to say it. It hurts to even say it. It hurts to, but in many ways, he's a phony. In more than like a great many ways. But he has to. Politics is pure public relations on the Democratic Party side. They can't say bring home Americans. They can say slash the budget. They can say cut budgets for military budget, but they can't say bring home Americans because they don't care. They would rather slash the budget, use it for other programs. But if you want to keep Americans there, that's fine. But see, that's why our military budget is so like 10. It's basically you can add up the 10 leading militaries in the world, and it still doesn't, or 8 or 9 militaries in the world, still doesn't amount to our military budget. Okay, the biggest reason is because we have so many soldiers abroad. And so, anyway, we can go on forever. We can go on forever. We've had a 20-year, we had foreign policy that has been around for 20 years. And it's a Bush and President Obama foreign policy. President Obama destroyed and obliterated the country in Libya with a failed NATO intervention. Bush altered the Middle East forever with failed military interventions, toppling regimes, and he made these mistakes. These mistakes were predicated on intelligence failures. Okay. You remove the biggest deterrent from Iran, and then that was one of the issues, but we can go on forever. The foreign policy has been an unmitigated disaster and failure. And this foreign policy was voted on by Biden and pushed initially by Bush-era Republicans that morphed into, so the neoconservatives morphed into the smart power Democrats. Okay. Much bigger issue than climate change, at least in the short term. Okay, in the long term, yes, very important issue climate change is. But you have these Democrats who, they look at the world from the vantage point like, well, if you just banned firearms, then the criminals won't get them. They have this world that doesn't exist in their minds. Like, they have this world where they live in that it doesn't correlate to reality. They live in cyberspace. Most of them. It's like Tron, like the movie Tron. That's why they obsess over everything Trump says on Twitter. Give me your thoughts below. Bush-era Republicans, hundreds of them, are creating a super PAC for Biden. Everything that I've ever said since 2014, 2015, in the Huffington Post especially, has been vindicated today. And Hillary Clinton's going to be nominee. So I called the election in 2016, 2015. In 2015, I called the 2016 election. I'm telling you right now, they're not going with Biden. I don't care if he accepts the nomination. I don't care what happens. I don't even care if he debates Trump once or twice. Eventually, Hillary Clinton's going to be nominated. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I think it's going to be at the convention. I don't think that Biden's going to be nominee at the convention. I've always stated that Hillary Clinton will be nominee at the convention, and I'm telling you, no, if it doesn't happen, then it's going to happen. There's no way they can go with Biden, or else they lose. And they know this. Because I know them. I was a lifelong Democrat my whole life. And then about 2 years ago, no party affiliation. I'm not a Republican. Democrats think they go after Republicans, they're going after Trump. No, look at what's taking place. You have Bush-era Republicans forming super PACs. Give me your thoughts below for Biden. Give me your thoughts below if you want to support my voice long term. My Patreon is below. Subscribe to H.A. Goodman's other channel. I'm going to have 3 segments every single day from here on out into the election, until way past the election. Well, forever. So from here on out, because this is crunch time, ladies and gentlemen. And let's put it this way. President Trump's going to win, but let's say he loses November 3rd. He can always run again. Grover Cleveland, the only president we had that didn't have consecutive terms, two non-consecutive terms. They lose the Mueller probe, and they lose the Mueller probe's completely unraveled. But you have John Durham, the Durham probe, William Barr indict a whole bunch of people. Oh, and then eventually it gets to Madam Secretary. So they're not going to completely tank their political party and their future in terms of a legal and political perspective with Biden. That's not the way they work. I don't know how it's going to happen, but Hillary Clinton, who's the only chance they have to win, she has a chance to win, is going to be nominee. Don't know how it's going to happen, but she'll be nominee. She'll lose again. Give me your thoughts below. If you want to support my voice long-term, people, my Patreon is below in the pinned comment and description. Thank you.